Okay, let's see. Good evening, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks again for listening. This is the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I am your host, Nelson E. Brown, and I'm so excited to be before you all this evening again. I know that some people are thrown off by the hour that we've lost this weekend because of Spring Forward, but my show is still going to be at 6 p.m. from 6 to 7 p.m. every Tuesday night. I know people are kind of thrown off by Spring Forward this weekend. Everybody lost an hour of sleep. Everybody may feel drowsy this week. And it's just a week that we all have to get accustomed to and adjusted to. But nevertheless, I've been able to definitely do a lot. I've been able to take a step back from a lot of work that I've done. I have spring break this week from school. So for the entire week this week, I have a chance to just sit down and to just lay around and do nothing for the next week until I return next Monday to school virtually. But I'm very glad to be before you all this evening. I'm thankful for you all for tuning in. I want to let you all know that, this month on the Beauty in Us Radio, right here on Awesome God Radio, we are celebrating Women's History Month for the year 2021. And this evening we have a very special guest. We have our award-winning author, Miss Tracee Garner, here with us this evening, and she's going to share a lot about what she does with her work, as an author, as an award-winning author, and she's also going to give us a lot of great insight into the work that she does as a disability advocate for our communities. But before we begin, I want to share a little bit of information about the disability community with you all this evening, just so that we can all understand what that means and what that looks like, because I think that can mean certain things for certain people. I don't think that everybody has the same understanding or level of understanding when we talk about or when we have conversations about the disability community. So Miss Garner is going to join us for the second half of the show, and she's going to be providing a lot of her expertise and a lot of information that pertains to the work that she does for the disability community and how she acts as a role model to people who may suffer from disabilities that, and in general. So I just wanted to give you all an opportunity to just sit back and to just listen for the second half of the show. I appreciate you all for tuning in. I appreciate you all for listening. But before we begin, I wanted to share some things with you all. I wanted to share with you all that I've definitely been doing a lot of devotionals lately, and I've definitely had the opportunity to read a book that was given to me by a family friend. It was by the author's name is Sarah Young, and it's called Jesus Calling, Enjoying Peace in His Presence. So if you guys ever find this book anywhere, please feel free to purchase it. It's filled with devotionals for every single day of the year. And so far, I've been enjoying the copy of this book, and with each devotional, I've been able to apply it into my life in some way or another. So I encourage you all to, again, look for this book. It's called Jesus Calling. It's Enjoying Peace in His Presence. That's what the book is called. That's what the title is. And this was given to me by a family friend. And I definitely do appreciate her. Thank you, Miss Jean. I love you. And I thank you for everything. But it's, like I said, it's very, very, the devotionals are very, very deep in this book. So on a side note, I just wanted to share that with you all, because that's what I've been doing in order to cope with a lot of anxiety and a lot of the stress and certain levels of sadness that I've been under in the past few weeks and even throughout the past few months. So I want to encourage you all to purchase that book or to read this book, when you can. But without further ado, I want to jump into tonight's topic. And again, we are talking about the disability community, and we are talking about the ways in which we can embrace the disability community. Ms. Garner is going to share with us some of the work that she does as a disability awareness advocate and she's also going to talk about her work as an author. But I did a little bit of research about the disability community and how the disability community is affected by the world and how they live their lives. So I did a little bit of research, and I did a little bit of background information. I did some research, and I was able to surf the web, and I was able to gather a lot of great details. And one of the sites that I surf often is the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and this was under the tab of Disability and Health Promotion. So the title of this passage is called Disability Inclusion, and it asks, what is disability inclusion? It says that including people with disabilities in everyday activities and encouraging them to have roles similar to their peers who do not have a disability is disability inclusion. This involves more than simply encouraging people. It requires making sure that adequate policies and practices are in effect in a community or organization. Inclusion should lead to increased participation in a socially expected life role or activity, such as being a student, worker, friend, community member, patient, spouse, partner, or parent. Socially expected activities may also include engaging in social activities, using public resources such as transportation and libraries, moving about within communities, receiving adequate health care, having relationships, and enjoying other day-to-day activities. So that definitely provides us with an overview of what it's about, what the disability community is, and more specifically, what disability inclusion means in the context of what we're talking about this evening, and what we think about, from another point of view and from outside of our own thoughts and ideas of what that means. So this article is about disability inclusion, and with the second portion of this passage, it talks about disability inclusion and the health of people with disabilities, and it says, disability inclusion allows for people with disabilities to take advantage of the benefits of the same health promotion and prevention activities experienced by people who do not have a disability. Examples of these activities include education and counseling programs that promote physical activity, improve nutrition, or reduce the use of tobacco, alcohol, or drugs, and blood pressure and cholesterol assessment during annual health exams and screening for illnesses such as cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. Including people with disabilities in these activities begins with identifying and eliminating barriers to their participation. And it asks, why is this important? It says that disability affects approximately 61 million, or nearly 1 in 4, which is 26%, of people in the United States living in communities. Disability affects more than 1 billion people worldwide. According to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, people with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory, such as hearing or vision, impairments, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. People with disabilities experience significant disadvantages when it comes to health, such as adults with disabilities are 3 times more likely to have heart disease, stroke, diabetes, or cancer than adults without disabilities. Adults with disabilities are more likely than adults without disabilities to be current smokers, and women with disabilities are less likely than women without disabilities to have received a breast cancer X-ray test, a mammogram, during the past 2 years. Although disability is associated with health conditions such as arthritis, mental or emotional conditions, or events such as injuries, the functioning, health, independence, and engagement in society of people with disabilities can vary depending on several factors: severity of the underlying impairment, social, political, and cultural influences and expectations, aspects of natural and built surroundings, the availability of assistive technology and devices, and family and community support and engagement. Disability inclusion means understanding the relationships between people, the way people function, and how they participate in society, and making sure everybody has the same opportunities to participate in every aspect of life to the best of their abilities and desires. So I just want to take a pause right there for a second, and I want to unpack that a little bit And I want to talk about the ways in which we view the disability community. Now, that article just gave us a snippet about what disability inclusion means and what that looks like in terms of how we perceive it in the world. I know that everybody doesn't look at it the same way. I know that people with disabilities are often overshadowed by people without disabilities. So that's why I wanted to bring Miss Tracee Garner on for the second half of the show, and she will appear in the second half of the show. But we just want to have a conversation about that so that we can have a better understanding of what that means and what that looks like. Because whether or not you notice it or not, you're always going to have people with disabilities, whether it's in a school setting, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in a fast food restaurant, a grocery store. You may have neighbors, you may have colleagues, you may have acquaintances, and you may even have significant others that have some physical or mental disability. So I just want to ask you guys, do you really think that the world, we as members of society, do you really believe that we cherish the disability community in the way that we should, in the way that we are supposed to? Because I know that the disability community often gets discriminated against on various occasions, especially in the workplace. And a lot of people don't really consider that. And I definitely did my research from the U.S. Department of Labor, and I looked under the Office of Disability Employment Policy, and it has employment laws that talk about disability and discrimination. And they have 5 important federal laws that protect individuals with disabilities from discrimination in employment and the job application process: the Americans with Disabilities Act, Rehabilitation Act, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the Civil Service Reform Act, and the Vietnam-era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act. So it says that although many employers and individuals have a basic understanding of the ADA, the non-discrimination policies of the other laws may be less familiar. Below is a short summary of each law and information on where employers can access additional information and compliance resources. Now, I'm not going to read this verbatim because I want to give you all an opportunity to read it at your own leisure. And I just want to tell you guys that the Americans with Disabilities Act and several other acts protect people with disabilities from discrimination in employment and even in housing. But in terms of the U.S. Department of Labor and what we're discussing right now, it's about and it pertains to employment. But I wanted to give you all an opportunity to just think about the ways in which we treat the disability community, and just think about whether or not we afford them with the same level of opportunities and the same level of respect and dignity that they deserve. So I want to ask you all personally, do you treat people with disabilities, whether it's physical or mental, do you treat them differently, or do you treat them equally? I know that this is Women's History Month, and we definitely have an opportunity to see things from another point of view. We definitely have an opportunity to see things from different ends of the spectrum all month long. I've had people from different backgrounds. I've had people of different ethnicities, different ages, and I strive to make my show as diverse as possible. I want to create as much inclusion as I can on my show, and that's why I wanted to talk about this subject, because I know that everybody deserves to be represented in their communities and throughout their workplace and even throughout their schools and in the education system. I know that everyone wants to be represented, and everyone deserves to have what they need and what they want in terms of being treated fairly and not being denied opportunities because of pre-existing conditions or because of disabilities that they may have inherited or that they may have been born with, or other circumstances that may have factored into why they may be disabled or why they may be a part of that minority group or that subgroup in our communities throughout the world today. A third article that I did research from and that I collected data from was from the Center for Disability Inclusive Community Development. So this is under the National Disability Institute, and this is an office under that institute. And it says that since its inception over 40 years ago, the Community and Reinvestment Act has encouraged banks to serve low and moderate income neighborhoods and populations. Originally signed into law in 1977, the law mandates that banks provide support for communities that are less economically stable through lending, investment, and service. People with disabilities make up a significant portion of the LMI population, yet the specific needs of this sizable subpopulation are often overlooked. In 2019, more than one quarter, which is 27% of working age people with disabilities were living below the poverty level, over twice the rate of those without disabilities. And people with disabilities often are excluded from the labor market and economic opportunities. It says that vibrant communities are best supported when economic opportunities are inclusive of LMI populations, including people with disabilities. 29 years after the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and more than 40 years after the passage of the CRA, there is an opportunity to re-examine the approaches, roles, and responsibilities of regulated financial institutions to proactively address the financial access and economic opportunities for the needs of people with disabilities. Now, this is a passage from the National Disability Institute about the disability community and the ways in which we can support people in that community, because we all forget, sometimes we forget that the disability community is a part of the minority group, and that they are a part of the subgroup, the minority population in today's world. And we just have to keep in mind that all of them, should be respected. All of them deserve to have the same opportunities. They should be afforded the same chances as those individuals who are not considered to be disabled in today's world. And that's where I feel as though many people, whether it's in the school systems, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's at home, I think that a lot of people have a difficult time understanding that. And that's where a lot of people get in trouble. But when we talk about the laws that are in place and that have been implemented to protect individuals, people with disabilities, men and women, little boys and little girls, it says that the Rehabilitation Act authorizes funding for various disability-related purposes and activities, including the state vocational rehabilitation program, the independent living programs, training and research, and the work of the National Council on Disability. It also includes 3 sections that prohibit discrimination against individuals with disabilities by specific types of employers: federal agencies, employers, businesses contracting with federal agencies, and programs receiving federal financial assistance. Section 501 of that act prohibits federal employers from discriminating against qualified individuals with disabilities and requires them to take affirmative action to employ and advance in employment qualified individuals with disabilities. Section 503 of the same act prohibits employment discrimination based on disability and requires affirmative action in the hiring, placement, and advancement of people with disabilities by federal contractors or subcontractors who have federal contracts or subcontracts in excess of $10,000. And the last section, 504 of the same act, prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities by federal agencies or by programs or activities that receive federal financial assistance or are conducted by a federal agency. Now, again, I'm not going to read everything else verbatim, but I just wanted to give you guys a better understanding of what the disability community looks like, and to just think of things from another point of view. Just think about the ways in which we can help the disability community, and how we can create more diversity and inclusion. I'm not really, well, to be honest, I don't really know many public figures that kind of act as role models for the disability community. I would love to do my research to see which celebrities or A-listers who are considered to fall under the category of disabled. I would love to see more people who are a part of the disability community in the public eye. I would love to see more A-listers and more actors, actresses, singers, songwriters, or people in the entertainment industry in general who have disabilities, because sometimes I've spoken to individuals with disabilities. I've attended schools with some classmates who have been disabled or who may have struggled with physical or mental impairments that may have impeded their progress in terms of how they would be able to work or how they would be able to attend school and just to move forward in different areas of their lives. So I've been in those predicaments and I've witnessed that myself. And I definitely had a better understanding. I was definitely able to see things from another point of view, because everybody doesn't understand what they don't know unless they actually go through that same scenario or that same situation. So I'm going to read a little bit about Miss Tracee Garner as she joins us for the second half of the broadcast. And I want to read a little bit about her, and I'm going to bring her on in just a few minutes. But I want to give you guys a better idea of who I'm talking about and why I feel as though her presence on this show demonstrates the beauty in all of us. Here on the Beauty in Us radio, we accept people from all walks of life. We accept people from different backgrounds, whether it's race, whether it's culture, whether it's disability, whether it's age. We accept people from all walks of life. So I think that this guest really demonstrates the true meaning of what it means to model what the beauty is inside of all of us. And in terms of what we're discussing tonight, the beauty in the disability community and how we are all one and we are all equally made. And we are all, made in the image of our Lord Almighty, and how we are all created to be who our God wants us to be and what our God created us to be. So I think that that's important, and I think that this lady, Miss Garner, I think that this is what she represents, and I think that this is what she is, and that's why I can't wait to speak to her in a few minutes. But I'm going to share a little bit about her before we begin. Tracee Garner is a best-selling, award-winning author of 14 titles. While Tracee's heart is in the romantic, suspense, and contemporary fiction, she enjoys almost every type of written and spoken word. Her first audiobook debuts this fall with Whatever May Come. Book 1 in A Current Affair, Book 2 in a 4-book series are now available on Audible and iTunes. Tracee will soon introduce her next nonfiction title, Disability, an antidote field guide of the rest of us, where she explores some of the challenges she's met in her life as a longtime advocate for herself and others with disabilities and how she overcame obstacles. She hopes the book will be a reference that people with disabilities and their families will want to refer to, obtaining sound guidance and advice repeatedly. And again, like I said, this is just an overview of what you guys are going to see and what you guys are going to hear and have an opportunity to listen to in the next few minutes as we segue to the second portion of our broadcast tonight. She's a best-selling author, speaker, writing coach, and course creator. She was born and raised in the D.C. area, and she holds a degree in communications from Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. Before she ever entertained the idea of writing full-length novels, she was a poet contributor to her alma mater's literary magazine. She tremendously enjoys writing, in the written and spoken word. Her first book came out when she was 23. It was published by the then named Black Entertainment Books, which is now called BET. This book helped launch her career as one of the youngest writers. In its prime, BET Books were the largest publishers of romantic titles that featured people of color as main characters. And she has served as the professor at the Northern Virginia Community College at both campuses, teaching how to write the novel, self-publishing boot camps, small business marketing, and PR classes. In addition to writing and teaching, she enjoys marketing, graphic design, making videos for her books with popular apps, events, and conference planning, and reading, of course. She confesses she is a recovering shopaholic. I'm reading, the information on her website, but since she's here now, I'm going to bring her on to talk about the work that she does for her community and as an author. So you told me I can call you Tracee. So Tracee, thanks again for agreeing to come on to the show tonight. I am definitely glad that you were able to take time out of your schedule to talk about the work that you do for the disability community and the work that you've done as an award-winning author with all of what you've done. I was just reading your bio. I was going on and on until I was able to see that you were on with us. So could you tell us a little bit about the work that you do for the disability community? And if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your disability and how you use that in order to, how do you use that in your work as an author, and how you use that to bring awareness about something that many people just don't understand or know about?
Hey, well, thanks so much for having me, Nelson. I really appreciate your time and being here and being invited on. So what I do right now is I'm a case manager for a small nonprofit organization in the Arlington area, and we also have a Loudoun County, Virginia office. I mostly help other people with disabilities, my peers really, of all ages, navigate services and access their community, to gain employment, Social Security, disability, all kinds of services that they need in order to live their lives and really thrive. So employment's a huge part of that. Transportation is also a big issue, how to navigate if you're going to drive or you're going to use a modified vehicle, and that's really expensive, and getting funding for that. And then also other things like healthcare access and access to other social services besides our own. So I just work with a lot of people, have a huge caseload of people that I'm helping every day when they call with questions and things that they need to know about in order to make their life better and more accessible, of course, and more enjoyable ultimately. I really started writing, just while I was in college, and really not feeling like I was fitting in. And so I did not understand a certain math class that I had, and I needed a way to escape. So I turned my paper over from an unsolvable math problem. I'm sure it was solvable, but it was unsolvable to me. And I just really escaped into my own little world where I created things, where I actually fit in, where the characters that I created fit in, and where they had happy outcomes despite the depressing and sad outcomes I was having in my own real life. So I tried to channel that energy that I had and really boredom and just not getting the material into a way that was positive. And so I really used that time in math class to self-medicate by escaping on paper.
Yes, it's very, very, very. It's very, very, very great to hear about how much of an impact you're making on your community through the work that you do in various capacities. And like I was sharing in the first half of the show, I was sharing a little bit of information about diversity and inclusion, not just in the workplace, but also, in schools and throughout different portions of our community. And I was sharing with the listeners that I just think that people often don't understand what it's like to be a part of the disability community, because the disability community is considered to be uh, filled with a group of minorities, people who are often not really given the chance to have equal opportunities, or and a lot of times people that are part of the disability community, they don't really, a lot of them don't really have much of a voice. Um, and I even said earlier on in the broadcast that I don't really know a lot of public figures that are really outspoken. I don't really know many public figures that are outspoken about any disabilities that they may have, whether it's a physical impairment or a mental impairment. I don't really hear a lot of celebrities or public figures with that platform where they just are open and honest about the struggles that they may have, or the disabilities that they may have. But since you are an award-winning author, and since you use the work, that you do from your community, and you are able to, it's able to transcend into the work that you do in your writing. How is that helped you along the way? Because this is Women's History Month, and I know that, you know I can imagine that it's very, very difficult for you, because you're a woman, you're a part of the disability community, and you're a person of color. So how have you been able to navigate all of that, in the midst, and what, as you continue to write, and as you continue to publish book after book, and as you continue to work in order to bring awareness and to inform people about how to embrace the disability community with open arms?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think that I will say that if I had not had a visible disability, I do use a wheelchair every day of my life. So I'm in my chair 16, 17 hours a day, from the time I get up till the time I lay down. I'm not sure always, I want to think that I would be woke enough and aware to disclose my disability, even if it was hidden. But because it's very visible, I really have few options. I can't hide my wheelchair. I can't make it clear so it blends in. That technology is just not there. But what I will say is that it is because of disability that I've been able to find my voice. I took some advocacy, a place called Partners in Policymaking, which is in several different states. That really helped me tell a compelling story that politicians and legislators were interested in, and let them know that these are my struggles as a person with a disability, when they won't fund transportation, when they won't pay the state wage for caregivers that I need in order to get up and lay down every single day, when they create lots of constant barriers to my living my life, when equipment is so high. So I would say that disability, when I found my voice around disability first, and I just had to keep talking and telling people, and people would invite me to say, well, tell your story, this will hit home with them, they'll be wanting to hear from you, because then they'll understand if you're able to paint a picture. And even though I was young at that time before I started writing, I now know that that was all part of my storytelling, not just to tell an actual tale about my life, but also the way to describe my world, and the way to understand it was to channel also that storytelling in my characters. And some of them have adversity and overcome things. But I think that it has been hard. I try to look at it now as a triple threat. Like, if you hire me, I'll check 3 boxes for you: disability, womanhood and gender, and race, as you say. But unfortunately, there's still a stigma. And so even people that are in Congress and people that are very public, a lot of them have some children with disabilities, and they still hide them, and they still don't disclose that, here, I have someone that I actually know. I think we've all been touched by it, but because there's such a stigma, nobody wants to really share about it or talk about it. But really, you become that much more engaged. You solve much more complex problems. I can't tell people how many problems I've had to solve by having to navigate my entire life. from a wheelchair. And so I just think that if you really want to be truly diverse and you really want to show, then you need to bring people with disabilities to the table. And the other thing I'll say, it's such a trivial example, but look how many things that we have assisted, non-disabled people with. Delivery people love the ramps that we need to get in and out of the doors. All the non-disabled people love the extra room in the bathroom in the handicap stall. That's why it's always occupied when we get in there. And there are just so many things, all the automatic buttons and the automatic doors. These are things that were often created out of a need to make the world more accessible for people with disabilities. But everyone takes advantage of them, and everyone is still thankful that they exist. And so the technology has just, grown exponentially because we have seats at the table and we're asking for those, those accommodations that everybody needs. But, you point out that, well, it's for people with disabilities. And so I think that once we can understand that everybody has contributions to make and there's value in everybody's thoughts and ideas, we'll be much more accepting. But we've come a long way, certainly, but like everything else, we have still a long ways to go.
Yes, and I definitely like how you described, you said, you're a triple threat because you check the box in three different, categories. And I did like the fact that you mentioned that, because we don't see, like you said, a lot of congresswomen or congressmen or people who are in the field of politics or public service. A lot of them don't like to disclose the disabilities that their children may have or that their family members may have or that they may even have. But is it more so about the disability, or do you think that when we talk about the disability community, do you think that it's because you guys are considered to be, a part of the minority group? Do you think that people fear that they're going to be treated differently on the basis of their disability? Because I do know that, and I did read a little bit about this earlier on in the broadcast about how sometimes people don't understand reasonable accommodation requests in the workplace or in the school systems. People just don't understand these things. They use these things and they use them, but they don't really understand what the purpose of all of that is. They don't really understand that it's just there, and they feel like they should just be using it or taking advantage of it, like you said, because it's there, without understanding the ins and outs of everything. So do you think that it's more so about the disability itself, or do you think it's about the fact that it's the disability community is still considered to be a group filled with a group of minorities? Race, gender, that's kind of out of the picture because the disability community is filled with so many different people. It's not one category of people. So what do you think about that?
I think that's certainly true. I think there's certainly a level of ignorance about things that people with disabilities need. I will say that most reasonable accommodations cost less than $500. And the thing that really bugs me about, when you go to a superior person in your company and you ask them about accommodations, I feel like they have such an attachment that is their money. That is their own pocketed money to give and to not give to you. And it's really a power trip, sadly. The money is there. There is federal money for accommodations. There's even tax incentives for adding a ramp to your establishment or getting automatic doors. Some of those things have been incentivized, unfortunately, because you shouldn't need incentives. You should just do it because it's part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. But there's this belief that, well, if I give one, then all of them will ask for it. So there's the cost, thinking that it's overwhelming. I, use an example that I needed my desk raised. And, the accommodation wasn't to get a new desk. It was to find a couple of phone books. And do you know how hard it was to find some phone books? Like, first of all, none of the millennials knew what that was, knew what phone books were. And then secondly, they're obsolete and they don't exist anymore. So, it was kind of funny. Like I just needed just a little few inches of elevation, and that cost absolutely nothing. I did not ask for a new desk. And I actually was the one to come up with the ideas. So when people think about accommodations, we don't even talk to people about, well, what does that look like, or what exactly do you need? We just assume that it's going to cost so much money. It's going to, take someone's job, and it's going to be just this headache. And if you think about it, some of the ergonomic chairs that people need, those are probably some of the most important things that people need. People have chronic back conditions, and people also don't realize that they're one injury away from also being disabled themselves. And I'd love to see people who have to use crutches temporarily. Not that I love that they're injured, but I love the entitlement that they feel all of a sudden when they're disabled. People will tell me, I've been in a wheelchair for 6 weeks and it was terrible. Oh my God, I could not believe this and I couldn't believe that. And I didn't have a way to get around. And there was no accessible transportation. And I went around to different stores and found out, like, oh my God, the doors weren't automatic. Like, I'm just thinking, like, are you kidding me? Really? You needed 6 months to understand that? That's my life every single day. And so people are just appalled that things don't exist when they need them, but they won't do anything to put them in place just because a friend or a relative or a colleague or a professional person or their employees need it. And that's what's so unfortunate, is that when it's your turn to have a limitation of some sort, or it's your turn to have a loved one that you're caring for in a hospital setting or in an institution or a nursing facility, you're all of a sudden outraged when you should be outraged all the time, because those things exist and because other people, granted, they're not your family, you don't love them, but you still should be concerned and you still should care that other people have the opportunity to fully participate and engage in the world around them.
Yes, and I definitely do agree with everything you said about, the fact that, people, they want the reasonable accommodation when it's convenient for them, but they're not willing to extend that same level of courtesy, that same level of respect and dignity to others that may ask for that, and people they just take things for granted because they never have to experience it every day like people in the disability community. But I was going to ask you, because I do know that you are an author, and because I've looked at your work, and you're more so of like on the romance side of writing. But have you ever really written about or created any characters that may have been a part of the disability community, in order to just use that character as kind of like a role model or a representation of what the world looks like, someone with a physical impairment or a mental impairment? Have you ever created any characters in your books? And if you can, could you tell us a little bit about the characters and how you went about the process of just creating the characters and finding just different details about their characteristics, their personality traits, and how you've been able to use that in order to get people to understand what it looks like and what that feels like?
Sure. So I have a couple characters. One has the same skin disease as Michael Jackson, vitiligo. I think I can never pronounce it right, but her skin is different, and it's actually a result of a fire. So it's a little bit more that she was burned, not so much the disease itself, but she has to use a very light kind of makeup in order to give her an even tone and an even complexion. She's actually a school teacher. And so she goes through a little bit of the hero being interested in her, but being concerned that not concerned, but he has to change. And so at first, he is rather ignorant about her complexion, thinking that she's white because her skin tone and the burn caused her to use very light makeup. And so he has to come around to that. But a lot of the insecurities, I have another character that has a heart condition, and she may eventually need a heart transplant, and she's falling in love with a football player. And talk about just the juxtaposition of her feeling frail and weak, and him being like totally and completely athletic, and not a scratch on him, not any kind of physical issue. So I try to match up those things But to me, the writing is the same in that I'm channeling characters' insecurities, not only about their disability, but they're the same kind of insecurities humans have about fitting in, about there's a scene in my story, Fatal Opposition, with the football player and the heroine with the heart condition, where she's always feeling like she's missing out. And that's because once, when they have a really great date and they get ready to kiss, she faints because they just ran down a flight of stairs in order to escape a fire. And so he helps her get down to the stairs, and she's just so mad. She's like, I'm out of breath. I'm going to faint. And she does. And so that scares him because he doesn't know, he just heard about her heart condition the other day. And he's like, it manifests itself right there before his eyes. But those are real feelings that I think people, even without disabilities, can have, because you always feel like you don't want to miss opportunities. You always feel like when things get going really good, my character is all of a sudden falling in love. And then, oh, geez, I have this condition that I constantly have to pay attention to. I think that about my own disability. Like, how is this going to hamper me today? How is this going to manifest itself where I might miss an opportunity, or I might be late because my caregiver's late, or just a number of contingency plans that I'm always thinking and doing the logistics in my head. And so I think that those are some of the same issues that non-disabled persons have about life in general, about love, certainly, about finding the one. And so I just try to think on a more, I guess, elementary level of what people would think about, and also people's deepest longings, my own longings in relationships, and really channel that into my characters. So there's also a little bit of me, disabled or not, in all of them that I try to express their innermost thoughts and desires that, we don't all talk about so openly.
Yes, and that is really, really great that have been able to create characters that resemble people in the real world, so that when people pick up the book and read that book, they are able to they're able to see themselves,
And
in there.
relate. Mhm.
Right. They're able to relate to, the people, even if they may not suffer from the same physical or mental impairment, they are still able to see that, okay, there's someone like me, from the same community as I am, represented in this book. And this is what he or she feels. This is what they're going through. And it's similar to what I'm going through. So I don't feel left out. So I think that's really, really great that you've been able to use some of your own personal experiences and some of your knowledge and your expertise, and you've been able to cultivate that in a very personal and passionate way. And that's something that needs to be represented more often than it really is. How do you think do you think that it's really, really how important do you think it is for children to understand what it means for maybe one of their friends or one of their classmates? Because I know that, for individuals who are born with disabilities, they grow up with disabilities, and they may not even understand why they are disabled, and they don't really they look at it as being different, but they don't really see it as one of their biggest strengths or one of the things that make them special. So and I think that many children have a difficult time seeing the beauty in that. So what advice would you give to children that may have disabilities, or who may feel like different from all of the other kids, or they may not feel special because, you know they may be a part of the disability community? So what advice would you give the kids who just don't understand what that looks like, and who don't understand what it means, and how to learn how to see the beauty in all of that?
Yeah, I think that today's children, though, are having such an easier time. Don't get me wrong, there's still bullying, there's still stigma, there's still a lot of adversity for them to overcome. But I think parents, some of them, have really gotten a hold of ways and resources in order to point out differences and to talk about how beautiful your child is, especially, I would say, I think about the hair movement and African American hair, Black people's hair, has really been embraced in the last few years due to the books. And the more images your child can see of a person with disabilities, wheelchairs, canes, walkers, crutches, speech difficulty, autism is huge, and very prevalent in a lot of cases. These people and these writers writing about these topics really give children a much greater amount of resources to go to, and really parents sharing with each other. And one thing I'll say about millennials, as much as I joke about them sometimes in my everyday conversations about not knowing where the post office is and not wearing deodorant, but jokingly, of course, not all of them, but that's like going around sometimes. What I'll say is that they share. They really share the whole Pinterest thing, the YouTube videos, the TikTok. Is so much about sharing, and I can only hope, and I really believe that sharing means that it'll bleed into so many areas, including child rearing. What's working? What did you do for your child when they were first diagnosed? What kind of resources did you do? And really, so many parents, young parents now, building things. A guy, that I've seen on the news built a wheelchair, out of I don't know, some old stuff, an old tire and some little wheels from a like an office chair, taking the wheels off, and just the creative way we're addressing things. I think that when I think back to my own parents, be like, my dad would have been like, I'll just carry you around. I don't know how to build that. And people sharing plans on YouTube about how to do these things. And so, again, I'm really encouraged by the level of sharing and the level of open talking that millennial parents do. And, maybe some people who are the generation just before that. I'm an X or a Z or a Y. I always forget. I have no idea. I think I'm a Y. But, so the level of sharing and the things that people are willing to talk about openly is encouraging. And then the images and the books, the children's books, we definitely need more. We need more diverse books. We need more books about people with all kinds of disabilities, not just physical and not just developmental or intellectual disabilities, but all of them. And so I think that is going to make a real difference. And also, I was bused to school. I was bused to a school for K through 6. I was bused to another school, leaving all my friends that I had made over that time for 7th and 8th grade. And then I was bused to a third school for high school. And that really limited my ability to build friendships and to know people. But now kids are integrated. If they don't have really, really severe disabilities and really significant behavioral problems, they get to remain in their community and neighborhood school. And I think that is such a big deal because it's teaching other kids to adapt to, the special needs kid in the classroom. And then it's also teaching the kid to have regular friends that, rally around them and help them, and also reaching for help. So I always have felt a little bit of deficiency in the relationship department because I have a handful of friends that have disabilities because we all were bused together. And then that's also been very devastating because my best friend also has a disability and, passed away in 2019. And so as I'm aging, I'm looking around like, who are my friends that I've known forever? And then they dwindle because I always moved around with other people with disabilities. And that was a real detriment, not only to myself, something that I've gotten over, of course, but when I think about it, I'm like, wow, what a missed opportunity. And that's kind of sad. But kids will look around now and they'll see their friends in the grocery store. They'll see them in the library. I lived in one neighborhood and was bused to a completely different neighborhood. When I shopped at my local stores, I didn't see my friends because I didn't go to the neighborhood school. And so that has really changed. That has really made a difference. And one of the things I'll say is such a big thing as you get older, as a person with a disability, is the isolation and the loneliness. And that's going to be its own pandemic and probably has been uncovered a lot in this COVID era. But you have got to find your child some friends, some lifelong friends that will be with them and that will know them, and also that they can develop a network and a support system with. And so I really stress that to people that I know, because Johnny and Susie are all of a sudden 30 and they don't have, any friends. And that is devastating and depressing and unfortunate, when we need to teach the families and the children how to build and make those relationships early on so they can last a long time.
Yes, I definitely appreciate you for sharing all of your great insight into the work that you do for the disability community and as a disability advocate, and also with the work that you do as an author, and how you've been able to integrate your personal experiences, and how you've been able to, again, cultivate that in a very personal and passionate way. And it transcends into the work that you do as an author. And it's very, very inspiring. So within the few minutes that we have left for the show, could you tell us a little bit about some of the upcoming events that you have, and how people can reach out to you if they want to learn more about how they could possibly contribute to the disability community, and how they can you purchase your books or read your work, and just again, help embrace the disability community more, and help learn more about how to just understand them from another point of view. Could you tell us a little bit about how they can reach you, and how they can in some of your upcoming events, and how they can get in contact with you?
Sure. So they can reach me at traceegarner.com. That is my website, traceegarner.com, Tracy with two E's. Some of my upcoming events are on there, as well as all my books that I have coming up. I'm in the middle of a 4-book series with 4 siblings, and I've explored 2 of them so far. But the next 2 will be coming out this year, and I'm excited about that, the Jameson family. I teach a number of classes online about how to write the book. I'll be teaching a diversity class for the Beaumont. It's a Regency Writers chapter in June. I have my own writers conference that I do every year for aspiring writers and people who have maybe written 1 book. It's a full day, a Saturday, and like a little happy hour on Friday night. It did go virtual last year, so we had a happy hour on Friday night, and with a panelist, 3 panelists who do different things, and so different books, different genres. And then on Saturday was a full day of an hour or 30-minute workshops with different speakers about all aspects of writing, publishing, and marketing your book. And so that will be coming out soon. It'll probably be in the fall. August 20th is our date right now. And I'm always doing workshops, like I mentioned, education, and I also do private writing coaching. I have a few students, and I take up to 6 a year. That's what I can handle with my full-time job. Take up to 6 students a year and coach them through the book process, the book writing process. So finishing the book, reading it, giving them feedback about changes they might want to consider making, their suggestions, and then also helping them to publish the book and get it uploaded onto the various bookseller platforms. So those are the things that I'm doing right now. And traceegarner.com to learn more, and use the contact me space to send me a note.
Yes, well, it sounds like you're very, very busy doing a lot of amazing things, and it's great that you have been able to reach back and to help other aspiring writers, other young writers who want to establish a career in the book publishing industry, and who want to tell their stories, and that's what it's all about. But I just want to thank you again for taking time out of your evening to hop on here and to share a lot about the work that you do and just your story. I definitely will be keeping in touch with you. I'm going to close out the audience and for the listeners for the last minute of the show, but I just want to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule, and I'll definitely be keeping in touch.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You too. Okay, well, that does it for tonight's broadcast. I want to thank you all again for listening. I want to thank you all again for just taking time out of your evening to listen to the Beauty in Us radio right here on Awesome God Radio. This was such an amazing conversation. This was such an informative conversation. Again, I want to thank you all for supporting this show and this broadcast. Next week, we are going to have Miss Mari Mitchell with us to talk about how to establish a career as a life coach and as a relationship coach, and how she's managed to make it as an entrepreneur all these years. She's based out of Southern California. So again, we are going to have Miss Mari Mitchell, here with us from Southern California virtually to talk about her career as a relationship coach, a life coach, and how she has been able to establish Dare to Be Authentic, her brand for her radio show, for her clothing line, and for her book publishing business as well, in addition to her life coaching business and relationship coaching enterprise. So again, I love you guys. I will see you next week on March 23rd from 6 to 7 p.m. So again, make an appointment to meet me back here at that time. I love you. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Keep your distance. Don't be nasty. I'll see you later.